The market has its own echo. This echo is of the unsaid. When organizations don't pay attention to feedback from the customers and the macro environment, it results in a strategic inflection point. Those organizations which cannot see the subtle shifts in consumer preference become obsolete and redundant in the marketplace. Strategic inflection points are like the tip of an iceberg, which are mistaken by organizations for floating ice. When organizations navigate the environment without identifying the strategic inflection points, they sink like the Titanic. The Titanic mistook an iceberg for floating ice, and by the time the Titanic realized what had happened, it had struck the iceberg. A strategic inflection point occurs because of a shift in consumer preferences or new emerging technologies. With the economic liberalization of India in 1991, there was a consortium of companies based in Delhi working on various projects. The project reports had to be sent to the parent organizations for approval using fax machines. Now, some of you would be aware that to send a 100-page report over fax machine to three different continents was a cumbersome task. First, you had to send the 100 pages to Australia, then to Canada, and finally to France. The pages of the report had to be sent one page at a time, and after sending 20 pages, you had to confirm whether the 20 were received as intended. Otherwise, you had to resend the 100 pages in sets of 20. The strategic inflection point that happened in the 90s was the advent of the internet. This resulted in a shift in consumer preference from the time consuming fax machine to sending attachments over email, which could be sent to multiple countries at the click of a mouse. Suddenly, fax machines became obsolete and redundant by a new and emerging technology called internet. Had the fax machine companies identified the internet as a strategic inflection point and diversified to computers, they could have retained the market share of a new product over an existing product that had become redundant. Few companies like Panasonic did diversify into computers to cope with the strategic inflection point. Maruti Suzuki began using laminated safety glass for their windshields in the early 1990s. When Asahi India Safety Glass was created as a joint venture between Asahi Glass Company and Maruti Udyog. In the late 90s, the market share of Asahi India Safety Glass had started declining in India. A consultant was hired, and after doing extensive research, it was found that the main cause of decline in the secondary market was due to a substitution effect. Instead of going to the authorized service stations, consumers started going to unauthorized mechanics who were replacing Ashai safety glass with a cheaper smuggled safety glass called Mulia. A strategic inflection point was identified. A full blown investigation where Ashai found that Mulia glass from Indonesia is being smuggled to India via Nepal and has flooded the grey market where customers frequent to get their windshields replaced. Based on the feedback given by the consultant in 2000, the first service center called Windshield Experts was created in 2001. Today, Windshield Experts has over 90 service centers in 50 cities. The timely identification of strategic inflection points, which was caused due to a shift in consumer preference to the gray market, resulted in Asahi India Safety Glass creating its own authorized windshield service center and thus captured the market share in the secondary market. In 1995, mobile phones entered the Indian market. This was a strategic inflection point, as those companies which were producing the fixed line telephones that did not diversify into mobile phones became redundant in the marketplace. Then there was the advent of smartphones. The smartphone era in India began in 2009. Suddenly, a smartphone which belonged to one industry started affecting the market share of multiple industries. Suddenly, the customer decided that they didn't need to buy a camera because a smartphone enables them to click pictures, record videos, and share them over the internet. The smartphone resulted in a decline in the market share for the camera and photography industry. The smartphone also impacted the music industry as well as the DVD industry. Now, the customer could listen to music and watch movies on their smartphone. Smartphones suddenly replaced cassettes, CD players, music systems, and to a major extent even impacted the market share of television. So let us look at the strategic inflection points in the television industry. In the 1970s, my grandfather used to watch Doordarshan on a black and white television. Color TV was introduced in India in 1982. Here, the strategic inflection point was new emerging technologies. Those television companies that did not absorb emerging technologies of color televisions suddenly became obsolete in the market. The 1982 Asian Games played a significant role in introducing color television to the Indian market. With color television, we started watching cable TV, and then came the satellite dish. On your television at home, you could watch cable TV, and if you had a satellite dish, you could now watch more channels. Now, the new emerging technologies have created the digital television. This was a strategic inflection point because of the new emerging technologies that made the regular color TV obsolete. Those television companies which did not absorb high definition and ultra high definition suddenly became obsolete. On a digital TV, you can connect to the internet and watch YouTube or Netflix. Netflix has created a strategic inflection point in the entertainment industry that particularly affects television. Digital TV has created a strategic inflection point, and companies like Netflix and Amazon Prime have made cable TV and the satellite dish obsolete. So, the most important question for organizations is how to identify strategic inflection points. Well, the organization needs to hire a team of employees that can see the particle as well as the wave. This means the ability to see the micro environment as well as the macro environment, the ability to see the forest as well as the tree. Think of an organization like a ship. Like a ship navigates the ocean, the organization navigates the business environment. This environment consists of shifts in consumer preference, values, and behavior with the introduction of newer and emerging technologies. This new technology and shift in consumer behavior needs to be monitored. This is why some organizations in the strategy affairs department have a division called External Technology Watch. The role of External Technology Watch is to identify the risks that may impact your business tomorrow. Once you are able to identify the risks, you can begin assessing them by understanding the likelihood of the occurrence of the event and its impact on your organization. Therefore, one needs to understand whether the risk is high probability and high impact or low probability and high impact. Once you can identify the risks in the environment, you are able to set risk control measures. So, the objective of every organization should be to set risk mitigation measures. Strategy formulation means continuous strategy revision. The external technology watch desk within the strategic affairs department needs to continuously identify and assess the risks, set to control the measures, and thereby mitigate these risks. To do this successfully, we can use the OODA loop. OODA stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. First, we need to observe the environment. To orient, we need to anticipate competitor actions and reactions to our move in the market. Then we need to decide on the action needed to outflank and outmaneuver the competitors in the market. For the final step, we need to act on our strategy by anticipating the competitor actions and reactions to our move in the market. To outflank and outmaneuver your competitors in the market, you need to war game scenarios, the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. The purpose to war game scenarios is to anticipate competitor actions and reactions to your move in the market. Like Arjun, you cannot afford to lose focus of strategic inflection points. The market is a battlefield like Kurukshetra, where corporate warfare happens, and competitive intelligence is the key to emerging victorious. Thank you.